Welcome back to Doing Different with Kimmy. I'm your host, Kimmy, and I'm so glad that you've tuned in. This podcast is all about the moments in life that force us to grow. It's about honesty, maturity, and letting God peel back the layers we've been hiding behind. And usually, doing different doesn't start with inspiration, it starts with pain, a challenge, a loss, a relationship that shifts, a moment where the old way of coping simply stops working. But here's the beauty of it: when we walk through different with God, it becomes a doorway, not to who we were, but to who we're becoming. Today's guest is sharing her own journey of doing different and explains how God reshaped the way she shows up in relationships and how that transformation has become a ministry to others. Her story touches on estrangement, forgiveness, emotional growth, and the courage to confront the patterns that keep us stuck. Julie Plagens is a wife, mother, double certified teacher, author, illustrator, content creator, and seminary student at Dallas Theological Seminary. She is the author of 3 books: Estranged, Interrupted, and Creating Family Memories. Her book, Estranged, is recommended by Focus on the Family's Counseling Department and Family Life Today, among many others, as a trusted resource for families in crisis. She has been featured on more than 22 podcasts and speaks to MomCo groups and women's conferences. She has written for Her View from Home, ChristianParenting.org, and is listed in FeedSpot's top Christian mom blogs from 2021 to 2026. She has also been featured in Women's World magazine. She has been married for 32 years. Julie and her husband are passionate about encouraging forgiveness, reconciliation, and boundaries in marriage and family. This conversation is going to bless you. So let's dive in and let's welcome my guest, Julie Plagens. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Kimmy. How are you today?
Well, I'm hanging in there. I'll be sucking on some cough drops here in a minute because I'm just recovering from a virus. But hang with me, everyone. Julie, I am so honored to have you here today. Your story is one that so many people quietly relate to, but they rarely feel permission to talk about it. So thank you for being so willing to share it here today on my podcast. So let's start right at the heart of your journey. What was the moment that you realized the way you were showing up in a relationship or in relationships that wasn't working anymore?
Well, for me, I guess I'm a little stubborn. And so it took a huge crisis for me to have a reality check of what I was doing was not working. And that was when I ended up in the hospital with a very serious condition, which turned out to be Crohn's disease. I was laying in bed waiting for a colonoscopy, and I was just thinking I'm going to die because it was pretty vile. If you know anything about Crohn's disease, it's something like the stomach flu, an ulcer, and food poisoning all at once.
Oh my
With
gosh.
I'm sorry to get a little graphic here, but it's also
No,
got
no,
like
that's fine. That's horrible, though. That is so
yeah.
sad.
And so that morning I thought I'm dying, I've got cancer, and I don't have much time to live. And so I knew when I came out of the colonoscopy, the nurse, not even the doctor, came in and she said, "You've got Crohn's disease. You're going to have a bag the rest of your life, an ileostomy, which means that they're going to take out your colon and you're going to have an external bag that will be where your waste is. And that's how it will, and it makes noises and it smells." And then she walked out and left. And not even the
Oh,
doctor came in. And I'd known that because my dad had had a temporary colon ileostomy. And so I knew, I thought, oh my gosh, my life's over. I can't live this way. I'd rather die.
wow. Wow. And so did it proceed? Did you go ahead and it had to get done? It had to be done?
Well, at that time, the scales kind of fell off my eyes, and I just decided that I needed to do some changes. And no, I did not end up having an ileostomy, thank heavens.
Yes.
After I left my family, that's when I decided that I needed a break, and I walked away from my family. And at that point, I was blaming them for all of my problems, but it took years to realize that I was a lot of the problem as well. But after I walked away from my family, after the first year, I could eat whatever I wanted. And so I
Wow.
realized the way my colon was healing, I went on a diet called the specific carbohydrate diet, which tremendously helped. It's like a paleo diet. And that plus managing my stress and getting into counseling really helped.
Oh, wow, that's a lot. But I'm so thankful that you didn't have to have that. I do have a friend, excuse me, that has that, and he seems to cope with it pretty well, but it devastated me at the time
Mm,
that I found out that he was going to have to get one. But he's handling it pretty well. So, and he eats normally. So,
that's
you
good.
know,
It's probably
yes.
improved. It was about 20 years ago now. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Well,
they
thank the Lord that you didn't have to get it. So
yeah.
thank God for that. I know that, excuse me. I know that you told me that earlier when in my form and everything that you told me that you had to grow up emotionally.
Mhm.
And what did that look like for you on the inside? Not just in your behavior, but in your heart. What did it look like to have to grow up emotionally? Because I had to do that too, and it wasn't pretty. So I'm just wondering, I'm curious of what it looked like for you.
It's funny you asked that because I had been in Bible studies most of my life. I was the typical preacher's kid. There's either two types, the really good, goody good, two shoes, and then the naughty ones. And I was on the Pharisee side. And so on the external, I couldn't understand because I was checking all the boxes, having my quiet times, doing all the right things, but my heart was really in a different spot. I was angry, bitter, had a lot of self-pity. And so those were the things that I really had to work on. And it took me years to realize that this is what it meant. But I was my husband and I were facilitators in a marriage group for about 6 or 7 years. And there was a counselor sitting in on that group. And he kept saying, you need to show up as an adult. And I had been doing that for, probably 10 years, but I didn't have a word or phrase for that. And I realized that, well, I'm like, yeah, I'm showing up as an adult, but am I behaving like one or thinking like one? And it meant, stopping the tantrums, the eye rolling, the walking out. I loved a grand exit.
Yeah,
When I
I
was a
can
form,
relate to that.
yeah, I was a former drama teacher, so my
Oh, okay.
theatrics definitely came out, and I had to grow up and stop doing things that children do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so sad. Sometimes for those of us, I can speak for myself. I grew up in a immature home. So my parents were very, very young when they started having kids, and I didn't come until the last minute. I mean, they said the mistake. But it was a nice mistake, is what they
Oh.
cover that up with. But they were born in the 30s,
Hmm.
and my mom is 94 right now, and she's still with us. My dad went home 20 years ago, but they were immature. She was 17, he was 21, and so raising
Hmm.
kids at that age kind of like transfers onto them.
Yeah.
And even as she got older when she had me, it's still back then, nobody went to counselors and nobody pointed out that you needed cognitive therapy or that you needed
Hmm.
emotional maturity or that you needed to work on yourself. It was just like, hey, you're the child, be quiet. I'm the parent, go to your room.
Hmm.
So when you're raised in that immaturity level, that emotional immaturity, it's kind of hard to take the reins and try to start self-disciplining yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been doing for years. And then finally, I found Grace Restored, and I'm the ambassador there. And that is where we work on ourselves and we learn emotional maturity. So I totally understand what you're saying. I was there, I was that drama queen. Comes out a little bit sometimes, still, but I totally understand what you're saying. And just to try to keep my mouth shut when I hear somebody say something that really bothers me and I want to interject, That's huge. I have to learn. That's a learned behavior where I mean, yes, you need the patience and you have to pray for patience, but it's a learned behavior if you're in a rut to shut your mouth and listen. And somebody once told me, and it got me so mad. I think I was 20, and it was when I was in the Betty Ford clinic when I had overdosed,
Mm.
actually. And a counselor there, and I had never been with counselors, and it was a group counseling session, said, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. And at that moment, I picked up a chair and threw it across the room. And they said, okay, she's going back to her room. It's like, I was 20. Yeah, I was young, but still, that's the kind of thing that's the way that I was immature. If I didn't like what you said, watch out. So I totally understand. So tell me, what was the hardest pattern um, to admit to yourself, the one that you didn't want to see? What was the pattern that you saw reoccurring that was really hard to admit to yourself that you didn't want to see it?
Yeah, well, the reason I left my family was because I felt controlled. And then lo and behold, I had my own kids, and here they are, young
Hmm.
adults. And I realized, as they were approaching that age, I was way too controlling, and it was passing down the next generation. And it wasn't until I went to regeneration at Watermark in Dallas, which is a Christian 12 step, that I realized how culpable I was. And it was starting to repeat the next generation. And the problems that I had with my parents were now showing up with my kids, and they were saying the same things I had said, which was quite a turn,
Yeah,
and
quite an
kind of
eye opener.
and humbling.
Yes, yes. And, with me, I went the opposite. I said, I will never do what my parents do. And I tried so hard that I overcompensated, being the
Mhm.
nice parent, taking them to wherever they wanted to go. But then the immaturity in me, and like like I had anger issues, and just if I didn't get my way, and just so those things were still coming out, but I
Yeah.
was overcompensating. So there was conflict, there was confusion. Like, my parents never overcompensated. They stayed steady in how they were. With me, it was, oh, I was being really nice and being the good mom. And then over here, if it was a bad day or I was on a medication or whatever, then I was the old way I used to be. So it was kind of confusing. And I understand about that, passing it down to the generation. And I don't know, did you say that your children were adults by that time, that you recognized that that pattern was happening, or were they teenagers?
It started manifesting in one of my kids in early teens. So, and
Okay.
it was just, I was thinking it's, with my parents, it was their fault. And with my teenager, it was, I won't say his or her fault.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I didn't take any ownership.
Were you able to kind of get counseling for that with the kids? Are the kids, recognizing that, are they seeing you growing and seeing, that you're working on it, or that you've worked on it? Are things, are they understanding about it?
Oh, after I went to regeneration, I had to make a lot of amends. And that really broke the generational thread that was going down. And I changed, and this child saw that and ended up in regeneration too,
Oh,
a
see,
year or
that's
two
really good
later.
news.
And so
Yeah,
we both have really good boundaries now. And yeah, I'm really close with both of my kids, much healthier relationship, and much I would say that I was an enabler and codependent. And if you're not okay, I'm not okay. So
yeah,
both need to be okay for me to be okay.
yep,
um,
exactly.
I think Jim Kress calls it being compassionate to an extreme or something like that, where you're
Yeah.
just over compassionate to the point where you're enabling, and maybe even you're doing a lot of people pleasing and trying to fix everyone else. And you can't do that.
Yes. No, you can't. And I had a little of that too, but I also had the tough love. And that's what I'm learning right now over at Grace Restored is how to handle that because, um, it's a fine line. We were just having a group discussion the other day about the enabling. It's a serious situation. It can really hurt them. And sometimes I did. I have a child that's disabled and I have a child that's very independent. So it seemed that I was being more enabling with the
Mm,
disabled child
mhm.
and more tough love with the independent, happy-go-lucky kind of person. So it was hard. It was a lot of ups and downs, and I'm so thankful, even though this is what our kids went through and they saw us at our rawest moments. It's so good how God's grace has given us second chances. And it's amazing how you found this regeneration. I'd like
Mhm.
some more information about that. And maybe at the end of our podcast, you can give our listeners some little bit of info or a link or something to it.
Great. Yeah.
So, excuse me. So, you talk about forgiveness coming in layers and you describe, well, I haven't gotten your book yet. It's on the way and everything, and we're going to be showing that in a minute because I know you have a copy. But um, are
There it
you there? It
is.
is Estranged. There it is. It was a little blurry, but we'll show it
Okay.
again. So in my questionnaire, I was asking you some questions, and you were saying how forgiveness comes in layers. So are you able to describe that a little bit for our audience today? What does that mean? That forgiveness comes in layers.
Well, I'm going to try and cut this down pretty quickly, but you probably need to understand a little bit of my family history. My parents were not saved. They grew up in nightclub business. My dad had one of the most successful nightclubs in Texas. It was the first really nightclub in Texas, actually, and he had acts from Las Vegas and Dallas going back and forth. My family is Italian. They were way more connected than I realized. And if you watch Godfather, you can see my family system pretty easily.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a little shocking when I watched that movie. I was like, oh my gosh, this is my family.
I
Um,
actually love that movie. I actually
it's
love it, but I know.
not so fun
Yeah,
when you're living in it. That's the extreme
exactly.
control.
Yes.
So I grew up in a very controlling family, and then my dad became a Christian and was ended
Wow.
up being an associate pastor at two mega churches here in Dallas, Texas. And during that time, in his time as a pastor, the churches, a lot of them were getting into what's called Bill Gothard. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Gothard. That's the
Mm-hmm.
shiny, happy people.
Yes.
So my family system went from one severe control, type of system to another. So it was just kind of a switch from Christian to non-Christian to Christian, and there
Yeah.
wasn't much of a difference. And so growing up in that, I had a lot of anger. And when I walked away, that was the first time that I had space to start thinking through what was going on. And before then, I really couldn't forgive because one situation after another would happen. Even as an adult, there would be blow ups and things that would happen. And my parents were expecting me still to obey them, even though I was, at some point I was out on my own, supporting myself, and then married, and I was submitting to my parents and my husband. I had three people I was trying to submit to,
Wow.
and it was more than I could handle. So I think the time I would not recommend walking away from family unless it's absolutely necessary. And for me, because of my health situation, and because I could not get there was so much chaos in the relationship. I needed space to start processing through my part. At that point, though, I thought it was their fault. And then it wasn't until I got the space that I realized how much of it was my fault because I didn't know how to set boundaries. And so, as I was in counseling and the Lord was really having time to work with me, I started forgiving. But then, that I would plateau, and I was gone for 7 years. And so I would have, God's gracious because he did not give me my whole, all of the problems and the issues that happened over all of my childhood and even in my adult years, you just can't mentally process all of that and forgive it at once.
Yeah.
And so in counseling, I just started dealing with the situations that were most relevant right now that were triggering in my marriage as well as in my other relationships. And I kept thinking, oh my goodness, this is stemming back to my childhood and my family and what I was trained to do. And so that's where I started praying for my parents, and that helped another level of forgiveness. I mean, it's hard to pray for somebody you're really angry with. I mean, at that point, there
Yes.
was contempt. And so it was just, it's layer after layer. And I still find that there's still layers that are happening. I have been back in relationship with my parents for over 7 years now. But there's still things that will happen that will cause triggers. And I'm like, oh, that's another unhealed area. And so anytime
Hmm.
I'm triggered, that's just for me, it's not, I'm triggered and you just need to watch out. No, the trigger for me is that's another layer that's unhealed. And I need to go back and forgive and heal and set some boundaries in those areas.
Wow. So is that what so my next question was, how do you keep your heart soft when old hurts try to resurface? Is that through prayer?
I would say that's one component, is prayer and scripture. And I'm constantly whatever the situation is that the trigger that's come up, I have to go back and start talking to myself and saying, okay, why are you so triggered?
Yeah.
What's the thing behind the thing? And
Right.
usually for me, I've pretty well identified a lot of my trigger, and that happened in regeneration is where I started really identifying my triggers and the places that weren't healed. And so, control is one of them when I feel controlled or when I feel taken advantage of or my time is taken from me without my really consent. And so I have to go back and start thinking through, where I need to heal and why that's still an open sore. And I just go
Hmm.
back through the process of forgiveness again and then figure out if I need to set some boundaries in that area where I feel like that's an unhealthy, I guess, situation or relationship where I need to maybe step back or just, talk through some things with someone.
Right. So the first step, it sounds like it would be recognizing what the trigger is. And then after that, finding a way to deal with it as far as how you're going to work through it, whether through prayer or through changed behavior. So it sounds like you're on the road. I mean, you're on the road to healing, and it sounds like things still come up, but you are learning how to handle them. It's easier now for you to handle them. And I can relate to a lot of that because my childhood, though, not like The Godfather, but very dysfunctional with alcoholism and violence.
Oh, that was in there.
Ooh, it was really scary. And though my parents were very loving, we're a French family. We're 100% French, so they're set in their ways. They do things their way, and it's not their fault because it's their parents and their parents. And if you don't have a system, if you don't have the tools to work with, how sad that is. How
Yeah.
sad it is that there wasn't anything available at the time, or at least they didn't know it. But it wasn't until they met Christ in 1975 that things changed, just like your family, where it flipped and it became, the drinking and the violence stopped. Years later, it kind of resurfaced a little bit, not much, but that same immaturity, that same control, that same various patterns were still kind of there. The flesh was still there. So I get that too. I understand that. It was just different. It was a different environment, but some of the behaviors didn't change.
Yeah.
So, but thank God the environment changed because I thought I was going to die. So,
Yeah. Well, I will
and I,
say I have a great relationship with my dad is in a nursing home and is no longer able to really communicate any longer. He's had
Mhm.
strokes but I have a really good relationship with my mom. So it did eventually, it's taken years to work through, but I would say I mean, I just have a constant conversation with God. That is how I keep my heart soft, is that it is a constant conversation with him all through the day. I try and step back and watch myself at times when I'm like, oh, okay, why'd you just do that? So I think and then I ask God why. And I think that helps.
Yeah, being aware and asking him to search our hearts and just having an awareness is huge. Just that one little thing, just to be aware of what we're doing helps us to be able to change and to process. If we're not aware that it's not normal and it's not right, I
Um,
mean, we all know it's the flesh because the Bible tells us what the fruit of the flesh is and what the fruit of the spirit is, right? And a part of that is anger. And so yeah, that's I would have to say that that's a huge fleshly sin of mine, and I'm working on that, and I might be looking up regeneration, but of course it's in Texas. You have to go there.
no, you can do
Um,
it online.
oh, you can.
There's an online program too that oh,
Wonderful.
whoops.
I remember when we first connected, you mentioned walking away from your family and how there was no Christian resources on estrangement at the time. And what was the season like for you at the time that you walked away? I mean, I know you were sick, you weren't feeling well. You
Mhm.
were not saved yet,
Oh
correct?
no, I was saved.
Oh, you
I
were
was saved
saved.
at
Okay.
6. Yeah, I mean, I grew up as a preacher's kid. My parents converted to Christianity when I was about 4 or 5, and I was
Oh,
saved when I was 6.
oh, wow.
So
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
great. And so I mean, how was it that, because we were just talking about this, how there wasn't anything available back then. Nobody counseled, nobody
Right.
talked about estrangement. You hid, if there was estrangement, you didn't tell anybody. So, what was the season like for you though during that time? And why do you think that it is a subject that most churches totally avoid? They don't talk about it, they avoid it. Um, why do you think that is? And how was that season going for you at the time?
Well, growing up, my dad became associate pastor when I was pretty young. And so I grew up I went from one public venue or, area, in the nightclub business. Our family was pretty well known in Dallas. And even when he left the restaurant business and shut down the bar, it made national news.
I bet.
So,
I bet. That's
yeah,
amazing
and
though.
it made no local news as well. It was on all 3 channels on TV when that all happened, and then eventually the restaurant shut down, and my dad ended up as a janitor at our church. Yeah,
Oh,
and
goodness.
so after a couple of years, though, I ended up moving up to business administrator and then associate pastor. So I went from one public arena to another. And so we pretty much hid any of our family issues. And I was told not to say anything, whatever was happening. And I want to say here and now, I was not sexually molested. So it was just, there was a lot of anger and a lot of control. And, obviously with Bill Gothard, that was a pretty severe lifestyle. And
Hmm.
you don't get any chance to really resolve conflict. So, all that to say, I was at a very public life. And so, when I walked away, my dad was no longer associate pastor, but they were still pretty well known. And I, because we had not really talked about it, I think, well, actually, my older sibling had already walked away. And so, this was three kids, and I'm the second to walk away. And so, it looked pretty bad. And I I think it was really difficult because I knew it was going to cast a pretty long shadow on my dad, especially. And I felt
Yeah.
a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And actually, there were people that did accuse my dad of sexual misconduct, which was not the case. But I think I felt so much shame, and I started looking because I'm a researcher and I'm a reader, and there were lots of different books from a clinical point of view, and there were non-Christian books, and I would look over that and kind of read the reviews, and I'm thinking, this doesn't fit me at all because I'm a
Yeah.
believer. My husband and I were in church. Actually, my husband was a deacon in the church. My parents were in church. They were still in ministry. And there's just so much shame around that in the church. And I knew that because I'd grown up in the church and we were told not to talk.
Yeah.
And because you don't want the pastor, their kids blabbing everything all over the church, it could jeopardize their job. And
Right.
so
But
I
but
understand that from my
but
parents'
of course
perspective.
that was back then though. So that was
Right.
more to be expected back then
Yeah.
in the 70s, 80s, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
you still,
now,
yeah, but you still carry that family system with you. Even I left when I was 40. And so you're still trained on what you're supposed
yeah.
to not do. And so I told my friends and they knew, but that's how I ended up writing this book is after I worked through it with my family, they gave me permission because they know how hard this is and that there's not really anything out there on this.
Mm,
And think about this. Now, how many people have a family estrangement that have actually worked through it can go around telling their dirty laundry to a certain point without causing another
mm-hmm.
family estrangement? So
Right, exactly.
I had to have everybody read the book to make sure that everybody would, that that wasn't going to cause another family estrangement before it went out. And there's a few things that I
Exactly.
had to pull out, not a lot, and I found something very interesting is that my sisters, when they read the book, we were debating on some things because they saw things, different situations, different than I did because of the age difference. And
Right.
so trying to get it accurate was hard too. So there's just a lot of issues on writing this book. And I think that's why there's not
Wow.
a lot out because it is a hot button and it's a hot button
Yes.
with even in the family. I mean, I've told them that I'm probably going to write another book on estrangement now that I've been in seminary and everybody's like, "Oh."
Oh, but at least it's a blessing that they gave you permission to do so.
Yes.
And I totally understand that because there's so much that I too want to share. And I'm beginning to write my book, and there's a level of fear because
Hmm.
things are smoothed out now. Things are not back to the way they used to be. I don't think they ever will be. But they're different and they're good. And everybody's getting older and everybody's changing. Um, but it's like you don't want to ruffle feathers. You
Mm,
don't
yeah.
want to bring anything into light. But at the same time, that you want to help other people. And,
Right.
my whole goal with my podcast, and I've said it a million times, is I want other women to be seen and heard and to be able to feel free to talk about their journey and
Hmm.
their different journey and what they're
Yeah.
used to walking and how different it is now and how is this challenging them and what are they doing to get through it and what is helping. And because I was stuck and I was estranged and I had nobody and I
Right.
had nothing at
Yeah.
all and no resources. I tried to read a book. I couldn't. I mean, I did, but I was so hurt and so much in pain. I don't know
Yeah.
how much of it sunk in. And then I tried it again and then it got better and
Hmm.
I did get something out of it. But I'm not a reader. Because and that stems back to my childhood because we never owned books when I was
Hmm.
a child. And I didn't know how to speak English until I was like 7 or 8.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and we were living in an Irish town. We had moved from a French town, so it was kind of hard. So if I was a reader, I think that I might have gotten a little bit more resources and more help at the time. But, um, it's just a sad situation still, once again, that
Hmm.
the church doesn't talk about it because how good would that be if they would have a group or they would have um, just a group that's called estrangement. What's wrong with that? Where you can talk in a safe space. But
Hmm.
obviously, You can't, because it's going to go around, and then it's going to cause more division and more issues. And that's sad, because the church is supposed to be there to
Hmm.
support you, and you're supposed to be able to feel safe. But that just isn't the case. Not that I know of. Maybe there are some out there. I am not aware of it. I know that in the past, when I, as an adult, uh, tried to get counseling in other situations, the male pastor came on to me. And so there went that out the window. I wasn't about to continue with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then now you're thinking, oh, is this what counseling is like? Was I supposed to be counseled by a man? Shouldn't I have been counseled by a woman? Why wasn't
Mm.
his wife sitting with him?
Mm.
And so then you just get a really bad look upon counseling, and you just don't bother with it. You handle it yourself, or you go to the Lord. And when
Hmm.
my estrangement first began, that's what I did, is I went to the Lord, and
Yeah.
he helped me through it, and then brought me into the Grace Restored community. So that was a big help. But I want to mention, focus on the family and how they recommend your book Estranged, Finding
Mhm.
Hope When Your Family Falls Apart. Do you believe that's because it fills a gap that didn't exist before? And what kind of responses have you received from your readers? Do you believe that that's why they are recommending your book? Because I see that it's filling that gap where it's not in the church. It's not in the
Right.
There isn't anything available out there. Do you
Hmm.
believe that's why they really love it? They fell in love with it, and they're recommending it?
Well, interestingly, a counselor from Focus on the Family was dealing with a family estrangement, and she was looking around for a book and found my book and read
Oh,
it
wow.
and contacted me. And, it's even happens to counselors at Focus on
Yeah.
the Family. And that's
Yeah.
how my book, she gave it to her boss, and they read it. Several people read it, and she was saying the same thing. There's just not any resources from a Christian perspective. And
Exactly.
so that's how it ended up getting attention. And then it's such an epidemic now. And I do
It is.
believe that we are getting, more help, I guess, at least in ministries. It's not something I've really heard it from the pulpit too much, but definitely, I mean, I was on Family Life Today with David Ann Wilson, and that's a pretty big broadcast. And we had
True.
three actually episodes on it. And
Oh,
so
wow.
so they are also, and as I speak on podcasts, some are smaller, some are bigger, and it really is starting to come to more of a forefront because so many Christians are experiencing this, not just Christians, I mean, not just non-Christians, but Christians as well. It
Yeah.
seems we're not,
It's an
maybe
epidemic out there. I'm
it
telling
really
you, it's
is.
this TikTok generation, Gen Zs. I mean, not just Gen Zs, but more so them, because of the social media. It's the
Right.
social media guru influencers that are telling
Yeah.
kids, do you? You
Yeah.
matter. I mean, yes, we do matter, but do you? Whatever doesn't feel comfortable, kick it out the door. Don't work through it, just leave.
Right.
And it's all about me. And the Bible did say in the last days that it would be a generation, basically all about me. It would be a selfish generation, and it would
Hmm.
be that parents and children would be disrespectful and disobedient to their parents. I believe disobedience is also disrespect. I mean, if you're 40, you don't have to obey your mother and father, but you do have to honor them.
Hmm.
And so, because the Bible says so, and it comes with a promise that you'll have long life. And so it's the culture. It is a culture now.
Hmm.
It's the thing to kick your parents to the curb. And granted, there are parents that are toxic, and you do need to be removed from them until healing comes. But I'm talking about parents that are sideswiped, just
Hmm.
have there wasn't really any toxicity in the relationships. It's just the kid didn't like what they said and saw something on social media that brainwashed them into thinking that this is what their parents were doing to them as well. So it's just really, really sad. But let me tell you this, as many young adults there are, it's almost like a war. It really is. It's a war of words because as many young adults are being turned away from their parents, the parents now are starting to equip themselves and doing podcasts and writing books like yourself and talking about it and learning how to deal with it. And I'll sometimes go on Google and find out, and I'll look and I'll search and see, what are these adult children talking about? What are they saying about their parents? And it's so interesting because in my group of Grace Restored, we're talking about what the children are saying to us and what they're doing to us and what we're experiencing. But then when I go out to see what the children, the adult children, think are happening to them by their parents, it's a completely different situations. So it's good to have both views, but at the
Mm.
same time, there is something very toxic going on. And I truly believe it's spiritual. I really, really do.
Yeah.
And your book is so helpful because there's so much of it going on right now at this very time. So for such a time as this, estranged, finding hope when your family falls apart is a blessing. And my book should be coming in here soon. I wish that I would have had it by today, but I don't. And so, but that's okay because you do. Let's show everybody your book, Estranged, Finding Hope When Your Family Falls Apart. Okay.
Okay, does that help? Yeah, there we go.
A biblical step-by-step guide toward healing your family problems or break. Is that what it
Yeah.
says? Or break.
Yeah.
Yes,
And you realize that I was the adult child that walked away. So it is from the perspective of an adult child, and I actually give reasons why adult children walk away.
that's
So
right.
for a parent that is scratching their head, wondering why did my kid walk away, I give pretty solid answers, and also it's very biblical. And but at the end my mother writes the afterword, and so she gives her perspective, and I put her in there so that she could give the perspective of the parent as well.
Right.
um,
Exactly.
but yeah,
That's what I love.
I tried to
I love
balance it
that.
out and give her a
Yeah.
voice. So
Because that's really important. And that's why I was going out there and I was looking to see what kids were saying or what adult children were saying. And of course, we're dealing the ages from 8 to maybe 17 to 25 is
mhm.
the the age group that I'm talking about. You were 40 when you walked away. So that's a lot older than so
Yeah.
that's unique. That's unique in and of itself from a perspective of somebody in their 40s that had to
Mhm.
walk away after they were already married with their own children.
Yeah.
That is something that you don't find very often that's talked about.
Yeah.
So with this generation 12-step program, how did it help you with the battle that you were dealing with inside? Like what one, if you could say one thing about regeneration that helped you with your inside battle, what would it be?
I think I realized how sinful I am, and I was so focused on everyone else and what they did to me. And it wasn't until I had to start looking at my own sins and where I had harmed other people, and realized how much I was repeating the same things that I was so angry and resentful towards. And I think that's really what started it. And it's in Matthew it talks about forgiving, and if you don't the if you don't forgive, God's not going to forgive you. And I have such a greater debt towards God than anybody has towards me. And so I think I had to start approaching it with a lot of humility. I did not realize how much pride I had.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I give you kudos on that because um, for you to even be willing to even look at that and to deal with that, that's huge. That's a humbleness on your part because there's a lot of people. I could tell you a bunch of people in my family that if you told them they need to look at themselves because they have a sinful nature and they really need to come to grips with what their part is, oh no, that would not go over well at all. But
Right.
for you to be able to get to the point where you've just had enough and now you're willing to do whatever it takes to get healing because you're sick of it. You were sick, you got sick, you see the generation is continuing on into your own kids, and now you're willing to take a look at it. Not
Mm.
everybody does that. Not everybody not I mean, that takes a lot of humbleness to be willing to look at yourself, and it's the same thing with addiction. You have to be at the bottom of the barrel to really want to reach up and get help and get clean and get sober. And it's the same thing with this, because wouldn't you agree that it's sort of like, I mean, it's bondage. It,
Oh, it
it's,
is.
it's
Well, and
bondage.
the going to a 12-step program, I had no real identifiable addictions. I'd never been drunk. I'd never smoked. I never partied. I was the goody two-shoes person, even to
Uh-huh.
adulthood. But all of my addictions were internal, and I think that's where I think maybe the parents and the kids maybe are missing. Even if you don't have external addictions, there's usually a family system that is, going towards control, manipulation, threats, even disownment, and
Mm-hmm.
because you don't do the right thing. And I think parents have, eh, what's happening in this generation is because they're walking away in their early 20s, by the time that their kids have grown up, maybe their estrangement is 15 or 20 years, and they may not see it repeating. Because I left when I was 40, and my kids my one of them was starting in their teen years, one was in elementary. But I had, I guess, the God allowed the benefit of me seeing it manifest and it turning on me after I'd walked away. And I think
Right.
parents that are walking away younger are not seeing that yet. And it's going to be another 10, 15 years before they realize that their kids are going to do the same thing because you've set the example. And
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
so
But also at
yeah,
the same time, would you have reached out for help? Would you have been humble prior to that in
no,
your 20s, in your 30s? Was it being 40 and seeing the pattern happening is what
no.
propelled you to go ahead and get that help?
Well, again, it came in layers. It started when I got sick, and I realized that, there's a problem here, and maybe it's me. And
Yeah.
so, I guess age has that advantage. But if I were in my 20s, I mean, I wanted to walk away in my 20s. I just couldn't, and I didn't have the guts to do it. And I think what happened was that I got so sick, I just felt I was in a corner, and it was either I was going to lose my parents or my colon, and I chose my colon to keep it.
Right,
And
right.
so, and our relationship, I would say, had gotten to a toxic relationship at that point. And there are a lot of kids that are walking away from parents, and it's just a difficult relationship, and they haven't been taught how to deal with difficult things. Like, I mean, I'm seeing people walking away over vaccines, over, when the whole COVID thing happened, that families were
Yes.
breaking up over something so stupid,
Or
or
politics.
politics, which has gotten, so, and it's like, we can live in the same environment and love each other and think differently and be okay. I'm talking about serious toxic things. Those are just difficult opinions, thoughts that
Right.
that you can work around.
Exactly.
And so I think that kids and counselors, again, are also telling the kids when they go to counseling to walk away. And so that's
Yes.
part of the problem too.
Yes, that is
And
definitely the problem. And
so,
and putting it in their head that it's called toxicity. It's
when
not
it's
called
not,
having difficult conversations or working out your problems or
or
and
just
granted,
loving. Yeah.
yeah. And granted, there's parents that are very difficult out there that are prideful and they don't want to, they're never going to change. And
Yeah.
I mean, so we think. But through prayer, people change. And I'm telling you, things changed with my situation through prayer, and it happened all of a sudden, and It sideswiped me, which it shouldn't have,
Yeah.
because I was praying for it to get better. But it sideswiped me
Yes.
just as much as it sideswiped me when the estrangement happened. It sideswiped me when it stopped. And it was, and I'm telling you, it
Hmm.
was the Lord. And God uses everything in our life for a reason, to change us, to help us to grow. And that's why the word of God says, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God. And you wonder, this is the will of God? Really? All this chaos and all this turmoil and all this drama, this is the will of God. And I keep thinking back, really, God, why would you have let me go into a family that had no idea what they had no clue that it was toxic. I can't
Yeah.
blame them, because they didn't know,
Didn't know any better. Yeah.
but it was at the point where having a drink was more important than having a relationship. And
Get that.
so, and I was the only one in the family that never drank, that didn't drink at the time. And
Right.
then I thought I'd join the club, and I
Mm.
became a bar manager at a restaurant, and kept doing it for years, until the Lord delivered me from that, because he knew my heart. He knew that that's not what I really wanted. I was just doing it to try to belong
Yeah.
like the rest of them. Hey, maybe
Yeah.
they'll accept me if I join in, and
Right.
that's a big mistake. You don't want to do that. So for our listeners out there who feel powerless and stuck in their family situation today, what's one thing that they can do right now that will make a difference? What can you suggest?
Well, Kimmy, I through the whole 7 years, I was praying and asking God to change everything. And I started asking for God to change me. And I stopped asking God to change them so much as it just changed my heart. But it wasn't until about the seventh year, and I felt like God was saying to not only pray, but to fast. And the Bible talks about, fast sometimes that, you need fasting added to it to break certain strongholds. Jesus said that. And so I started, it was at the first of the year, it was 2017. And the Lord just told me to start fasting. And I thought, okay, I'll fast for 2 days. And I really didn't want to. I thought, how is this going to help? This is so stupid. But fasted on a Monday and a Tuesday. And I thought my dad's not hearing during the day. So Lord, would you just please talk to him in a dream? And I don't know why I prayed that. I just thought, well, he's Italian, he's kind of stubborn, and so once you know it, I fasted on a Monday and Tuesday. My dad called Friday after 7 years, and
Wow.
he had had a dream. And when I we went to 2 weeks later, we went and had dinner with him at their house, and we were talking, and he said, yeah, I had a dream. And he said, I dreamed that we were sitting here at this dining room table talking. And he
Wow.
said it was just kind of a flash, a moment where he saw us talking and getting along. And he woke up and he woke my mom up and said, Julie's coming home. And I'm sure she thought, he's had too much lasagna, go back to bed. But he called the next day, and that's what started the relationship back. And it took a while to earn trust and all of that, but it was, I mean, God brokered our deal. So I
Wow.
would suggest not only prayer but fasting, and you will start seeing strongholds break when you do that.
Amen. Amen. And had they tried to reach out prior during those
No,
7 years?
no.
They never tried to reach out or
My
chase you, begging you to
my
come back, or
I take it. There was a few letters here and there, and my dad had a heart attack, and so I did go see him, but my mom wasn't there. I just went to see him. He was pretty drugged up when I saw him. So that's the only time I saw my dad. But there were some cards, and oh, I told them not to contact me, and so it was very few and far between. So
right.
there was no contact with our whole family. My kids did not have grandparents for 7 years. So,
Oh my gosh.
but call, no, never, never had called in 7 years. So,
My goodness. That
yeah.
that's heartbreaking. It really is. And just experiencing that just a little bit myself is just, it's heartbreaking. And not only with my family, but with my husband's family as
Hmm.
well, for a year's time. And through that time, his mom had gotten breast cancer, and
Hmm.
there was still no connection or anything even through all that, and we looked so bad to the family. And
Yeah.
but you have to protect your peace, but there's a certain, I mean, basically when I read the Bible, I see that what the children are taking care of the parents. Okay. If you say that to somebody today, uh they would be like, no, that's not what I'm going to do when I get older. I'm going to do this, this, and that, which is fine. But if you look back in the Bible and all the different stories, the children usually would take care of the parents because there was no nursing homes.
Right.
And so they would take care of the parents. And even back in the early 1900s, people, my dad comes from a huge family. The
Hmm.
more kids they had, the more the farm was productive. So it's like I
Right.
thought, oh, what a horrible way to have children, is I'm going to just have one more, farm hand. I would
Mm.
never do that. I planned my children and I gave them the world. And
Right.
how different culture has
Yeah.
changed. And
Absolutely.
really, those are the ones though that are tough. Those are the ones that grew up, succeeding, for the
Hmm.
majority. I mean, but they were hard workers. They went to war. They weren't fragile.
Hmm.
But then on the other hand, they were
All
tough
right.
parenting too. So there needs to be a balance, I feel, in my opinion. So, Julie, where is God leading you next in your journey? And are there any new books on the horizon?
Well, I'm at Dallas Theological Seminary, and I just finished. Let's see, not last semester, but the semester before, a Trinitarian class, and one of the assignments was to write a children's book explaining the Trinity. And so I did. I wrote one, and my professor loved it, and he said, "You need to get this published." So I am in the midst of
Wow.
getting it published. It should be out probably in a couple months, and it's called. Well, I don't know. I guess it's copyrighted already. So it's called Good Night
Oh,
God. It's like,
oh,
Good Night Moon. Well, this is Good
yes.
Night God. And
Oh, nice.
so, yes, I do have another book coming out. It's my first children's book, and I wrote and illustrated it. And it's with Westbow Press, which they're a division of Zondervan and Thomas Nelson. So I'm very excited
Okay.
about this book. So I will, I wish I could give you a sneak preview. I do have a kind of a protocopy I could go get, a prototype
Yeah,
that I turned in.
yeah, I'd love to, if you take a picture of it, or I can include it in the bio when I go ahead and post this in the podcast, or you
But
can show it
it's
to.
yeah, it's not exactly the book though, because my editors have changed it around a little. So it'd
When is
probably be
it
good.
coming out?
I think it'll come out. My daughter's getting married this summer, and so I
Oh,
am knee deep in
congratulations.
wedding planning, and I'm also in school. And so I think I will probably launch it this fall. I might get it up on Amazon this summer, just so it's all ready. So I'll do a soft launch this summer and probably do a hard launch this fall.
Do you self-publish for Amazon, or are they going to do it for you, the Zondervan?
They put it up on Amazon, so
Oh,
they'll put
okay.
it up
Okay,
for me.
nice.
So I think this time I've had to put up. I've had Estranged was self-published, and then I had a let's see, a publishing company. It was Christian. Oh goodness, I can't believe I can't remember the publisher. But this, I love having Westbow Press. This is even a better because they're connected with Zondervan and Thomas Nelson. So, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't remember
Nice.
my other books publisher. It's Christian Enterprise Studios. That's what it is.
Nice.
So,
That this helps for others, who are wanting to write books too, because, a lot of people, and me included, we don't know. I mean, yes, we can self-publish. I have a couple friends who have self-published, but if you really want to, get the book out there,
right,
um, like Susie's got her
yeah,
bestseller.
yeah,
You really need to know the ropes. You need to know
yeah,
how to go about it. And I think we need more workshops on that, because a lot of
yeah,
people have their stories to tell and they just don't know how to go about it, how to start, how to publish it, how to
yeah.
illustrate it, who to edit. I know of an editor who's a friend of mine, but still, I still have little bits and pieces here and there that I don't know. So, but I'm just letting God lead me and at the right time and when, to continue because I started writing my book last year and then walked away from it for a little while.
Hmm.
So I might even change things up or whatever. I might change the title, whatever. But tell me where listeners can connect with you and be part of your community.
Well, my email is julie@momremade.com, or you can find me on social media and Facebook, Instagram, or Pinterest at julieaplagens.com. And I have a Facebook group called Christian Family Living. And of course, you can find my books on Amazon. And if you're not a big reader, it's also on Audible. So, and it's also on digital. So, and you can find it not only on Amazon, you can find the digital copy in almost any venue in Apple Books or
And focus on the family.
yeah. And I would love for you to get it from Focus on the Family and support them. So I am so grateful for them to carry my book.
Do you go to focusonthefamily.com and then to their bookstore, or is it
I
focusonthefamilybookstore.com?
think it's Focus on the Family Bookstore. You can get on either way and just get on, say, bookstore, and then you can find it. So,
Okay, and your website is
yes,
momremade.com.
.com.
Okay. Well, Julie, I really want to thank you for sharing your heart today, your honesty, and your journey. It's been amazing to hear what you're doing, what you've been through, the humbleness that God has given to you. It starts there. In my opinion, you need to be humble. You need to want it. You need to desire it. You need to, get on that train of deliverance, desire, surrender, humbleness, and and
Yeah.
and the miracles will come. And same thing, your willingness, just your willingness to talk about estrangement, forgiveness, and
Hmm.
emotional maturity is such a gift that you have. God has blessed you with this gift. And I know that the listeners are going to walk away today with hope and with clarity for their situation, for those who are stuck and just
Yeah.
don't know what to do next. And to everybody that's listening right now, remember that doing different starts with letting God do something different in you. And you're not powerless, you are not forgotten, and your story is still being written. If this episode has encouraged you, please drop me a comment and share it with somebody who you think will need it. Subscribe, it's free. But share, please. And don't forget to help others by telling them about this interview with Julie, because this has been such a blessing and it's going to help so many people. And her story has been so encouraging. And I know that other people are going to want to hear it. So, once again, I just want to, as a reminder, Julie's website is momremade.com, and her books can be found on Amazon, Focus on the Family Bookstore, and all of the other resources that she just mentioned a little while ago. And all of these links are going to be posted below in the description of the podcast. And as always, keep doing different.